Good morning. May the Lord be with you. Today's chapel is about the good of the ordinary. God has always used the ordinary people to bring about his kingdom. Abraham was not one of the world leaders who commanded respect with great armies. Moses could not speak well, but became the leader of people. David defeated Goliath with weapons of a shepherd. And Jesus himself was born a manger, grew up away from power sources, and spoke the good of humility. Paul notices this in 1 Corinthians 1, verse 27 to 29, when he talks about the foolish things. He means foolish in the sense that the things God uses are not the things the world thinks he should use. The world is looking for a hero with much power and popularity. The world is looking for a dramatic story of great inspiration, but that is not what God seeks. Paul writes, God has chosen the foolish things of the world to shame the wise, and God has chosen the weak things of the world to shame the things which are strong. And the base of things the world and the despised God has chosen the things that are not, so that he may nullify the things that are, so that man may boast before God. Before we ordinary people start singing, could you all stand and greet other ordinary people by saying, "May the peace of Christ be with you."
Before Gospel Choir sings today, could you please join me in a prayer? God, please be with us this morning. Help for us to see the ordinary things that are made beautiful by you. Help us to look to you as we, in the coming months, look to the birth of your Son, who came in an ordinary way for us to see him. So please, God, let us use our strengths and also our weaknesses to love people and to care for people and to show compassion for people. Help us to look for those things in others that we might not see if we don't really take a look. Thank you, God, for this day, and thank you for the beautiful, ordinary people in this room. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Beginning and the end, beginning and the end. Oh, the Godhead three in one. The Father, Spirit, Son, the Lion and the Lamb, the Lion and the Lamb. How great, sing with me, how great is our God. How great lift your name on high. Oh, we lift your name on high. We lift you higher. We lift you higher. We lift you higher. We lift your name on high. Oh, we lift your name on high. We lift you higher. We lift you higher. We lift you higher. We lift you higher. We lift your name on high. Oh, we lift your name on high. We lift you higher. We lift you higher. We lift you higher. We lift you higher. We lift your name on high. Oh, we lift your name on high. We lift you higher. 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 We lift your name on high. Lord, we lift your name on high. Yeah, we lift you higher. We lift you higher. We lift you higher.
That was not ordinary. That was amazing. Can we just give them a hand again? Whew, wow. I find it kind of funny that I'm speaking in a chapel about ordinary people, because when somebody asked me once, what kind of superhero do you think you would be, Mrs. Claver? And I thought about it, and I said this to them, think I would be average girl. I would wear my beige cape, and it would have a lowercase a on it. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, everything I do I feel like is average. You know, got average grades. When I try to do a 5K, literally I'm always in the middle of the 30 and up crowd, the race finishers. Average girl. So I find that kind of funny, but happy Tuesday. I'm Mrs. Claver. I teach Spanish here, and I am a huge fan of all of you, by the way. A huge fan of all of you students. I absolutely adore watching you guys sing, watching you guys play the drums, the violin. I love coming to your sporting events. I love going to the volleyball games, which you guys should definitely go to on Wednesday. I love going to the football games, the soccer games. I love coming. I can't wait to see Shrek. I've heard a lot of talk about Shrek. When I was at a orchestra concert last week for the middle school, I heard these parents talking about Shrek. They're having Shrek pre-game, you can't call that, pre-play parties at their house because they can't wait to take their kids to Shrek. I can't wait to see it either. So I am a huge fan of all of you, and I truly, 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 selfishly, I love coming to those events because I feel blessed after I go to those. When I get to see you use your gifts, it blesses me. I kind of feel like I get the sense of when you use your God-given gifts, you're in the center of God's will. And when I get to see that play out, it blesses me. I want to give 2 shout-outs. First of all, I want to give a shout-out to all my peeps up there on that first balcony who I get to worship with every Tuesday, right? You guys up there, you know who you are. And I want to give a shout out to our chapel class, all the staff and the students who put this together. Guys, seriously, come on. It is an enormous amount of work that they do to bring this together every week for us to have a time to worship together. It is a lot of work, and so we just appreciate all the work that you are doing for that. So first of all, here's kind of the body of what I want to talk about. Did you know that this month is National Novel, Mrs. Strand told me this yesterday, our dear Latin teacher, National Novel Writing Month. It is National Novel Writing Month in November. And so I want to talk about that a little bit. I want to talk about story, the elements of a good story. Donald Miller wrote a book called Blue Like Jazz, and in the second or third chapter of this book, he talks about the elements of a good story. And he was sitting in a literature class, and I believe it was Reed College, which is out on the West Coast, and it is a very secular college. And he was sitting in this literature class, and the professor was talking about the elements of story: setting, conflict, point of decision, resolution. And he began to ask himself, where did these elements come from? We don't know why these elements exist. Who created these elements of story? And why? Why do these elements just connect with the heart and mind? Why do we respond to them? Well, he goes on later in that chapter to discuss how this literature course, in which they're talking about the structure of story, actually brought him to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ because of all that reflection that he was doing. That reflection of why does my heart and mind respond to this structure? And here's a quote from his book. As silly as it seemed, the structure of a story met the requirements of the heart. It felt more than true, it felt meaningful. I was starting to believe I was a character in a greater story. The magical proposition of the gospel, once free from the clasps of fairy tale, was very adult to me. Very gritty, like something from Hemingway or Steinbeck. We've heard a lot of amazing stories this year in chapel so far. We have. I sat up there with my peeps up there in that first balcony. And when we listened to the story of, it was on the videotape, it was when the guys came and they were talking about the new drug, pornography. And when I was watching some of those stories on the screen about people who have made a decision to free themselves from the grip of pornography, I sat up there and I cried. It was incredibly touching. And then when we heard the stories of the men from Teen Challenge, and I was just so moved by them, right? Here are these guys with these great kind of gritty East Coast accents, Philadelphia, New York, and they're over there praising God, lifting their hands up, and they were telling us about that decision that they made to follow Christ instead of follow a drug, the addiction of a drug. And I was moved. And how couldn't you have been moved last week with our speaker, who from Liberia, and I couldn't even imagine what he had been through, but yet here he is on this stage proclaiming the good news of Jesus Christ, joyful, and I'm just thoroughly overwhelmed by those stories. Well, fourth hour, my dear fourth hour class, I get to see them next hour, and what they sometimes will get from me is that I need to process chapel with them. And so that happened a couple of weeks ago, where it was the Teen Challenge chapel. And I was like, wow, my mind was just going, and I had to process this chapel with them. And we talked about God's goodness and God's redemption and God's calling us back and how powerful he is. Then one brave student in my class raised his hand, or maybe he didn't even raise his hand. They don't typically raise my hands in my class, but said, you know what, some of these chapels, though, I just can't connect with. I'm not struggling with addiction. I'm not struggling with a ton of dysfunction at my house right now. And what I was getting from that student was actually something I was resonating with, very much so. I've not struggled with addiction. I've not struggled with some of those same things, those dramatic stories. And that resonated with me, and I think it probably resonates with a lot of you as well, that does my story really matter? Does it really matter? I don't have this big point of decision happening in my life right now that I need to free myself from pornography or from alcohol addiction or drug addiction or addiction to premarital sex. I'm not struggling with those things. So does my story matter? And yes, it absolutely does. Because remember at the beginning I said how I am a fan of all of you, and I am. I love seeing you play your talents out on the public stage. I love that. But what I really love even more is that senior in my class, Paul. That's right, Paul, I'm going to put you on the spot. Paul Van Vliet, right? Who doesn't care if freshmen make fun of him. And I've told Paul, I've said, that's a gift that you have, Paul, that you have this approachability, that these freshmen in class are having fun with you. That, to me, is not ordinary. That is very extraordinary. When a student holds a door open for me, when I'm making a seating chart, and I think, thank the Lord for these students who I can place anywhere on the seating chart because they get along with anyone. Those things are not ordinary. They are extraordinary. And you have to know that all those little decisions matter, and actually they are what moves us forward in our walk in faith. We're going to watch a clip now. I could try to sum up this clip, but the chapel class wrote a beautiful introduction to this clip, and so I'm just going to read what they wrote. How should we answer the student who feels like there is nothing dramatic about their lives? Our first thought is to answer that is through the undramatic that God works most. It is in the little things, in the ordinary. How shall we fight evil? Consider the following clip from The Hobbit. Those who think we fight evil with great power and force have it all backwards. It's in the common parts of everyday life that God's goodness flows most. Simple, everyday acts of forgiveness, reconciliation, kindness, faithfulness, self-control, perseverance, self-sacrifice, these are all where God works. Why does Gandalf like hobbits? Because they understand this. Not only do you not need a dramatic story of great power, but the goodness of God seems to even resist this. Think of the verse in 1 Corinthians. It may seem foolish to the world, but God works in the ordinary to remind us of who we are and who God is. Let's watch the following clip. Thanks.
Mithrandir, why the halfling?
I do not know. Saruman believes that it is only a great power that can hold evil in check. But that is not what I have found. I found it is the small things, everyday deeds of ordinary folk that keeps the darkness at bay. Simple acts of kindness and love. Why Bilbo Baggins? Perhaps it is because I'm afraid. And it gives me courage.
Do not be afraid, Mithrandir.
for those of you who do not know me, my name is Audrey Hookwater, and I am a junior here. As we just saw in the clip from The Hobbit, Gandalf says to Galadriel, "I found it is the small things, every act of normal folk that keeps the darkness at bay, simple acts of kindness and love." What a simple thought, but yet so profound and true. What I have found is that oftentimes in chapels here at Grand Rapids Christian, we listen to a speaker with such a powerful testimony who has experienced challenges far beyond anything that I have ever felt. And for many students, including myself, it can be hard to relate because many have not experienced hardship that even comes close to that of the speakers. Sometimes I personally am left feeling naive in a way because I doubt the strength of my faith since I have never been through anything that has caused me to seriously struggle with it or even lose it. However, I think this is a misconception. Must we always have a powerful story to lead others to Christ? Is it possible to be strong in the faith without having gone through a traumatic experience? I would argue yes, of course it is possible. While I have no doubt that God can use dark situations to draw people close to himself, and I've been deeply and profoundly moved by the powerful tests of those who have shared in chapel, I do not think that this is necessarily true for everyone. Saint Teresa of Lisieux once said, "God's love is revealed just as much in the most simple soul who does not resist his grace as in the most sublime," meaning that God can be glorified just as much through the soul that simply trusts in receiving God's grace as the soul who has come to know him through dark times and struggles. I personally haven't been through very much hardship in my lifetime. All my life, I've been blessed to grow up in a family that loves God and cherishes each other. I've been in Christian education my whole life, and I've grown up going to church every Sunday. I haven't been through many traumatic experiences that have led me to Christ, and I honestly cannot say that God has spoken to me through drastic situations. But I can say, however, that God speaks to me through the simple little things in my life and the blessings that he so richly pours upon me. As Gandalf said, it is the very act of normal folk that keeps the darkness at bay, simple acts of kindness and love. God has revealed himself to me through small and simple ways, and I think that those truly are the acts that keep the darkness at bay. I see God in my family, in the fact that we share family dinners together when possible. This is something that not everyone gets to experience, but I do, and for that I am grateful. I see God through the special needs students I volunteer with, and how innocently and fearlessly they love Christ. While this is just a small thing, I do believe God is using it to shape me into the person I am meant to be. God has revealed himself to me in small ways, and that is okay with me, because all in all, I'm doing the best I can with the life God has given me. We cannot control our circumstances, and we cannot determine how difficult or easy our lives are going to be. We can, however, work to love and to honor God in all we do, no matter where we may be in our lives or how difficult our lives are compared to others, so that someday we can hear those words we have so longed to hear. Well done, good and faithful servant. Thank you.
Gospel choir would like to sing one more song for you, and I know we've you know Nate, but I just want to thank again Nate publicly for all he does here. So thanks, Nate.
All right, once you stand to your feet, put your hands together. Come on, stand to your feet. Wake up, wake up, wake up. We're going to sing this simple song. And we're going to sing it a few times through, but we want you to sing it with us. All we're doing is acknowledging that our God is the Holy One. Would you agree? Would you agree? So we're going to sing it a few times, and once you grab it, release it in the atmosphere with us as we declare as one mighty choir that He is the Holy One. Are you ready? Come on, choir, sing, Holy One, sing. Come on, sing it with us. Holy One. We declare with the fruit of our lips, He's the Holy One. And we praise Him this morning. Oh, let's take it up, choir. Sing, Holy One. Let's lift it up today, sing. And we bless His holy name. We're declaring that He's the Holy One. Everybody say, oh, we love you, Jesus, with our whole hearts. And we lift our song to the heavens. We're declaring you're the Holy One. Those hands and give God a shout of praise. Go in peace. Go in peace.